Greetings, everyone. I am very excited and honored today to be in conversation with Mandara Cromwell, and we're going to be talking about the power of sound healing and cymatherapy in particular. But before we launch into our conversation, let me just give you some brief background on her, and her more full bio and contact information will be listed below this video. So she is an entrepreneur, researcher, inventor, and author. She is also the CEO of Cyma Technologies and oversees the manufacturing of the Acoustic Meridian Intelligence devices. I love that term, by the way. It'll be great to talk about that. And her invention, the AMI 750, was nominated for the Thomas Edison Award for Innovation in the fields of science and medicine in 2013. She has spent more than a decade researching the efficacy of both the visual and auditory aspects of sound and their many applications for improving health. She is also the author of Soundflower, The Journey to Marry Science and Spirit, and the creator of the Soundflower Experience, a sound visual meditation for relieving stress. And she continues to create new ways to apply the principles of resonance to help heal the world. So thank you for being in this conversation today, Mandara, and I'm very excited to talk about your journey with exploring sound healing and how you came to develop this amazing technology that you've developed to help others heal. So can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you got into this process?
Heather, I'm delighted to be here with you today and having this time with you. My journey starts very early in my life, where I happened to have a grandmother who I spent a lot of time with. And she was a natural in the vibrational world. You know, they say that we live in a world of vibration and frequencies. Well, I was born into that with a type of consciousness because of my experiences with my grandmother. And she had a beautiful rose garden. She would talk to the roses. She would, there were vibratory fields that she identified as I was, following her around the garden. She would talk about the spring coming, that the birds had said that spring, the snow's melting and the spring will be here in a couple of weeks. And we go, Grandma, how do you know that? And he said, well, the birds were talking about it this morning. And
beautiful.
So it was really interesting, because later in my life, I found the work of Rudolf Steiner, who said it is the bird's call that brings forth spring. And so in my childhood, I was introduced to following the natural cycles in our world, following the seasons. My grandmother had the Farmer's Almanac. And we would always go fishing on the good fishing days and come back with a pail full of fish. And I grew up on a farm. We weaned the calves according to the sign of the moon. We cut our hair according to the sign of the moon. We were really in a profession, a farming industry that followed the elements of nature. So it was really easy for me to understand the natural laws growing up in this type of environment. And my grandmother always had this famous saying when we were getting ready to embark upon something. She would say, follow the energy and don't fight the wind. So it's
beautiful.
Right away from the get-go to track the energy patterns and where is that? Are you going against it? And anyone who has grown up on the farm and has weaned calves at the wrong side of the moon, they will have many sleepless nights the calves will bellow and bellow and keep you awake all night long. So I had that experience. And then in addition, I grew up in a very devout Catholic family. And so we went to a Gothic style architecture church where there was this beautiful pipe organ, and those notes would resound from the architecture. The church itself was like a living organism, and you couldn't help but entrain body, mind, and spirit with that energy. And, being in this type of religious upbringing, we had pictures of the saints and Mother Mary and, all types of religious altars and things like that to surround ourselves with not really idolatry, but with energetic forms that kept us in a calm state, a thankful state. And every night when I did stay at my grandparents' house, I would hear them saying the rosary as they were going to sleep. And in my family library, we had the books of Saint Rose of Lima, Saint Catherine of Siena, Saint Francis of Assisi. And all of these saints had mystical experiences. So I thought mystical experiences were the norm. When I would speak to my grandmother about some experience that I recently had, we had this common language. And so I felt at home conversing. Then one day she did tell me, hey, listen, maybe you shouldn't share that with too many other people, because there are some people who don't have experiences like this. And I was just baffled, like, really? And she said, everybody comes with their special talents, and they have talents in other areas. So this was my upbringing of, living in a rural area, listening to the birds, listening to the trees, feeling the vibration of the flora and fauna around me. And when I was after college, went to India and realized that they have very similar customs in the way their temples are built.
Yes.
And in the way they surround themselves with different gods and goddesses. And, that was like the saints and the angels in our home. And as we prayed the rosary, they had malas where they were chanting and saying japa of Sanskrit prayers. And so coming into alignment of these energies is a very natural state for me. When I was in India, I studied Ayurveda. And so this is the oldest medical system that still exists today. And that's also all about vibration, of listening to people's breath and following their pulses. Part of the remedies that the doctors would use there, particularly when people were having an emotional or a mental challenge, upset, was to send them to the temple. And these temples are built on particular points, which
Sacred
I know
sites.
You've had guests on your show that have likely
like Rory Duff
spoken about this. So these temples are built on specific points, vortexes, and built with pillars and carved with artwork, domes and spires to harness the energies of the earth. And so we would go into this temple and immediately you feel some type of sonic alignment. I know I always do when I go in and I stand under one of those domes. I just feel like my whole nervous system is being queued up and, cleaned out, realigned. So
it's such a powerful healing energy. It's the energy of source. It's the energy of cosmic consciousness, of love, that can really, and what I love in what you're talking about is this understanding of attuning to the energies of the earth. And in astrology, we're attuning to the energies of the sky as well, to be in harmony, that you're really talking about how to be in that harmony and right relationship with these energies around us. And when we're out of balance, how to come back into harmony.
That's right. That's right. And, if we look at the texts that still survive, even in the Bible, we have the words of wisdom that say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God. And so right there is the key to, how do we connect to this? In the Vedic tradition, we have Lord Vishnu resting on the cosmic shoreless ocean. And within that, sound, that primordial sound that emits, we call it the cosmic hum of Om, that bija seed mantra of Om that is now practiced all throughout the world, particularly since yoga has become popular. Even in secular traditions, they are chanting Om, which is just really a beautiful mantra. And, I want to also point out that in the Chinese Taoist tradition, they have what is called Wang Chong, the yellow bell. And the yellow bell is this inaudible sound from where all of creation is expressed in its divine form. And from that inaudible sound are 12 lesser tones that then come into the celestial realm and become the zodiacal region. And from the zodiacal, it comes into the Meridian System within the human body. So in these ancient philosophical traditions, in these ancient medical systems that still exist today of the Ayurveda and Taoist Chinese medicine, we are immediately connected, body, mind, and spirit, from the earth through our physical body directly to the heavens, directly to the star systems. And in those particular systems, just to expand a little bit more, they use astrology, medical astrology, when examining their patients. So it's a beautiful tradition in both cases.
Well, and what you're talking about that is so profound is that these ancient cultures understood that core knowing that everything is vibration, everything is energy, and everything mirrors everything else. So the energies in the sky mirror the energies in the earth, mirror the energies in our bodies. And so as we can attune to those energies and come into balance and harmony with them, then we're in balance and harmony. And we've gotten sadly disconnected from that ancient wisdom, I think particularly in the last 4,000 years. And what's incredibly exciting to me and powerful is that what you're developing in your Cyma Technologies and your understanding of Cymatherapy is how to weave that ancient wisdom with modern science and technology to bring that back into our understanding now and ways of healing and coming back into harmony now.
Absolutely, they're related. And I believe the reason this technology that I'm working with the AMI, Acoustic Meridian Intelligence devices, is observing and honoring the natural laws that we see in our environment. We are truly affected by the elements, by the cycle of nature. And if we look at nature in what really resonates with us, I invite everyone, if they cannot relate to this, to take a walk in the garden, because in the petals of the flower, we see the expression of vibrancy, of life that strikes within us some resonance. And, my devices have different sound frequency patterns, and each of the codes that I work with consists of 5 frequencies, and this relates to the golden ratio that is so pleasing to us in nature. I think as we take technology and keep in mind the natural laws of what really feeds us, what nourishes us, and align
healing
with that, that is where we find the healing. When we go to the other side of sound and frequency, and not to say they're not valuable, because, we have the right frequencies that were designed to target pathogens. Sometimes we need that. But I think and what I have found in my clinical observations, in my research, that the closer we remain to nature, the more vibrant we are, the more connected we are to the immense rivers of life that extend from the physical body all the way through the universe.
Oh, Mandara, this is so beautiful. And say a little bit more. I found that fascinating reading your book, that these, what you're working with are related to these 5 frequencies that, and as we were talking about before we started our conversation here, that relates to the 5 elements in Chinese energetic medicine. It relates to the 5 levels of our energy bodies. But interestingly enough, 5 is also resonates with the energies of Venus. And in my herbal training, 5-petaled flowers are often associated with healing herbs. So that number 5 really resonates with the energy of life force and healing.
It's very significant, I find, as well. The geometry, I always say sometimes God is geometry of the divine, because this is right in front of us everywhere if we, pay attention. So in Ayurveda, we have the panchakoshas, the 5 bodies. We have the physical body, and then we have 4 subtle bodies. The first body next to us is that we call it the pranamaya kosha, that energy body, or in some systems it's called the etheric, which feeds the subtle body, the physical body. So it's really important to keep that connection very strong, because when that breaks away, we drop the physical body. So the pranamaya kosha is very important. The next level is the manomaya kosha, and this is where all of the emotions are stored. And for people who have studied the chakra system, this is where all of those come into an interplay there. And we have all of our gifts that we've brought forth from other lifetimes with us there. Then we have the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the higher mind. And so it's very important to keep that connected. Sometimes our emotions, when we have intense trauma, that blocks the doorway to the higher mind. So it's really important to keep that connection clear. And then the 5th body is the Anandamaya kosha, which is, we call it the bliss body, which is our God consciousness, our higher self is existing there. So when I first started working with Dr. Manners, who's a British osteopath, who passed the torch of this body of work of the frequencies that I work with. When I was first studying with him, I asked him why 5 frequencies. And he said, well, we tried 1, we tried 2, we tried 3, we got to 4 frequencies. It wasn't working. We got to 5. And That was it. So I asked him at the time, do you know about the panchakoshas? Because I could immediately connect.
See the connection.
Each of these frequencies are, yes, they're working at a cellular level, but they're also working with this other, because, we are a complex messaging system with the photons, with the sound, with all of the acoustics. We're hardwired for sound and vibration in particular to bring into coherence all of what we just spoke about, the five bodies, all of the layers of being, and to align with that divine connection. After all, we are spiritual beings here having a human experience on earth. So somehow or another, we need to stay grounded and, honor the physical temple, meanwhile having coherence with all of the subtle bodies.
This is extraordinary. So it sounds like this combination of 5 frequencies is resonating with all of those layers of the physical body and the subtle energy bodies, and reminding people about how to come back into harmony, how to come back to their whole healed self. And it also sounds like you're really working with using the meridians at the bottom of the feet. Is that right? So that the sound and frequencies are entering all of the meridians in the body and then reverberating through the person's whole system.
That's correct. I developed a particular device for Dr. Manners, and it was a large, kind of clunky looking, if we look at computers back in the 1980s, we go, oh my gosh, we had those, and now we can access everything from our cell phone. It's really condensed. And so when the parts to that particular device became obsolete, I said to myself, I have got to make this easier for people to use. I've got to get this out now that I've seen how effective it is to as many people as possible, because we are a world in trouble that need help. Many people need help getting back in some type of alignment so they can serve and do what they've come to do, instead of getting, convoluted into this, all of these environmental toxins and our typical health challenges that we have today. And so from my studies in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, knowing about the value of the bottom of the feet and how those portals can access all throughout the physical body, I experimented with using sound delivered through the feet. And so people sit in a chair and they put their feet on the device, and the sound is traveling all throughout the body. It actually reaches clear up into the head. And I did a lot of research to prove this efficacy. And so people can see that on my website, and how I did this with using thermal imaging, which is a non-invasive way to look into the body. But what was really interesting about that time, Heather, is this is back in 2008, 2009, there's a researcher at University of California, Irvine, who started out to sort of disprove the Meridian System. Now, let me tell you that the Meridian System and its concept has been around for thousands of years. And throughout our history, I'm talking about yours and mine and the people who've lived in this millennia and in this past few decades, we have a lot of Western minds who are trying to debunk what they call woo-woo. But it's very interesting, in their efforts to debunk, they are finding the truths. And this so happened with Dr. Joey Jones at the University of California in Irvine, where he was going to disprove the Meridian System. So I'll share this very quickly with you. There are, on the lateral side of the foot, acupuncture points for vision, to affect our vision. And so if you're going to see a Chinese Oriental medicine doctor, they would, and for an eye disorder, they would activate those points on the outside of the foot down toward by the heel area. And so Dr. Jones activated those, and then he was comparing that to shining a light in the eye. And then he was looking at the occipital region of the brain to see if it registered.
Any activation.
Okay, so that the retina of the eye, yep, there it was. Activated the acupoints on the foot. Yes, it registered in the as well. But here is the amazing thing. It took 0.250 seconds for it to register from the retina here. But from all the way down on the foot, it reached the brain in 0.0000007 seconds.
Wow.
So what does that tell us? That tells us that the Meridian System is a super highway, superconductor to message all throughout the body. So when I was developing at that time the AMI 750, I had contracted this thermal imaging technician who was really, her main business was helping women with their breast health and tracking changes over a period of time. Because, you know, if we can get to something before it is fully expressed in the physical body, that would be a good pattern to disrupt and rearrange into another cycle, right?
Because it's looking at inflammation, which is really at the core of most disease.
That's right. That is the underlying cause of all degenerative conditions, but particularly in the breast issues that we see today. And so she was sitting there watching, and now I had already had a study published in the BEMS journal on peripheral vascular disease, peripheral artery disease, and so with the Cyma 1000. So with developing the AMI 750, I wanted to at least match that efficacy. So that was my goal. So she was sitting there. Oh, for weeks we had people come in. We were looking at their legs, looking at the, we had all sorts of people with all sorts of extremity conditions to watch what was happening. And in the first 10 days, she's sitting there watching the camera because you can see it real time. Finally, on the 10th day, she came to me and she said, "There's something really going on here." She said, "What do you think this would do for my breast challenged patients?" So we were only looking at the lower extremities. She wasn't focusing the camera up on the full torso. And so I laid out an invitation to her. I said, "Why don't you bring in your worst cases and let's take a look?" So these were women who, I'll just go back to the legs, proved the efficacy of the AMI 750 even faster than the Cyma 1000. So coming through the bottoms of the feet was really on target. And so that you can see on the website. But with the breast pilot, she brought these 6 women in who year after year, their scans were not improving. And so again, you can see the poster child of this study on the website. But this particular woman is the wife of a chiropractor. And for 10 years, they had used nutraceuticals, lasers, all kinds of what we would know as complementary therapies, or sometimes alternative therapies, to rescue what was, how are we going to disrupt this pattern? And so what you see is that over this 6-week protocol, all the inflammation has disappeared from the torso. And so what we ask, I'll go one step further. What is the source of this inflammation? How come she hadn't been able to rescue this with all of the therapies that they had been using? So during the breast pilot, the thermal technician I had asked her if she would back up just a bit in her capturing of the images and capture from here all the way down so I could look at the oral cavity. Now, from my studies in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, and you can actually find this on the internet, you can search teeth related to organ systems. So there are teeth that follow the different meridians. And so in these women, we could identify, I went back and asked them if they had root canals or crowns or some type of periodontal condition in their oral cavity, because in all of them, we could see intense inflammation in the oral cavity. So here, this root canal had been coming all the way down, and she had no pain. There was no idea that anything was brewing here. She went to the dentist and asked for the tooth to be removed. When that was removed, that cleared up.
It's extraordinary. It shows how much all of the systems of the body are interconnected. And that's part of what's so powerful about that understanding of the meridians, and how when we have blocks at any point in the meridian, it can manifest in symptoms in other parts of the body. But the other thing that I think is so beautiful in the work that you're doing, Mandara, is that allopathic medicine and even some of our alternative medicines are based on the principle of polarization. If there's some symptom that indicates something in our body is overactive, then we do something to calm it down. Or if it's not activated enough, we do something to activate it. But it's based on that principle of polarization. Whereas what you're really exploring with sound healing and with cymatherapy is how we can bring all of the systems in the body into resonance, into harmony, into balance, to remember their natural state, the natural state of healing and wholeness. So it's as if every aspect of the person is being reminded what it's like to be healthy and whole again. And then the body can come into resonance with that and heal. And I also think this taps into your understanding of biosignatures, which I think is really important. Can you talk some more about the whole understanding of biosignatures and how these frequencies are reminding the organs and the aspects of the person to come back into right balance?
Everything has a pattern. And so what we want to identify with are the patterns that support us. And so I'm going to loop back to the breast pilot that we were just talking about, in that the pattern that the chiropractor's wife was identifying with is the infection that was coming down from this particular, the teeth on the premolars on that particular side. Now, sound, I have come to witness in a plethora of cases, an observation, how gentle these sounds are. So when we realign the pattern in one body, and in this case, it was her physical body, and, she finally, with her dentist, had that tooth removed because it was harboring lots of undesirable patterns trapped there.
Yeah.
Then she began to have a quality of physical health that she hadn't known for some time. Interestingly enough, there is an emotional component here. So we ask what's happening emotionally. Mm-hmm. And as I was doing her closing exit interview of what happened in her life, she said, you know, my husband and I have had a very challenging time in our relationship. And words that I probably would have used that had barbarous points in previous months, somehow or another, I found a softer way to express myself. So let's take a look at this. A lot of the breast issues that females in particular are having, and some males as well, is an injury to the heart center. And somehow the sound, and again, as I say, I've seen this in a plethora of cases where the sound very gently is realigning on many levels, on all of these 5 levels that I referred to earlier of the subtle and the subtle bodies and the physical body. Somehow or another, she found the gentle way to express to her husband, and their whole relationship shifted for the better. Or at that time, she's reporting to me for the better. So sound is extremely powerful. And when we look at the signature of that, we're having this alignment coming into play of the natural biosignature. The liver in Chinese medicine is the general. And, when our anger becomes inflamed, the liver is, and she has calmed that down, because when we're inflamed, we never say the words that we wish we had said in retrospect. She was able to speak her truth to her husband, and a healing transpired. The sound, these complex sound wave frequencies that are 5 frequencies layered into a specific, I call it AMI frequency patterning, that I have figured out. When they're administered, it's a natural evolvement from that space of hurt. We've been able to transform this trauma. Not that the memory isn't there, but the charge is released, and we find forgiveness, which they found in their relationship, because the husband started doing sessions while she was having he called and he said, my wife is having these changes. Can I do this too?
That is so beautiful. And it so speaks to how every aspect of who we are is interconnected. And you bring that harmony back into our awareness, and everything then is shifted by that. But I think it also speaks to how, and I think this is what we're understanding more and more about energy and vibration. And I do believe, as Pluto, from an astrological perspective, is moving into Aquarius, we're seeing more and more of these innovations and remembrance of ancient wisdom that we can bring back into connection with our modern understanding of science, to come back to that understanding that everything is energy, everything is frequency, everything is vibration, and the understanding of natural law, that we need to come back into connection with the energies of the earth and the sky. But I also think we're increasingly understanding that as we interact with each other, words have power. They have vibrational frequency that can be hurtful or healing. And that we're surrounded, with what's going on in the collective by this cacophony of sound and toxicity. And so part of what's beautiful in working with sound healing, from my perspective, is it's helping all aspects of the person to remember how to be centered in balance and harmony and in that right alignment with the earth and sky and their soul self, to then be emanating that in how they're interacting with everyone around them. And that then really supports the healing in relationships. But I think as we can come into that harmony within ourselves, it's also holding that harmonic for the collective also. So it's so profound in terms of, as we really work with that deeper understanding of sound and vibration and frequency and how to remember how to be in harmony, it can literally change the world.
It can. And it's a very exciting time to see all of this happen. The ideas of the ancient traditions that our modern world sort of thinks as woo-woo, now their science is proving, is validating those principles. It wasn't just some metaphor that they were talking about in the Vedic literature. It wasn't just some thought that this could work in the ancient Taoist traditions. And just recently, there was a study, a report from Stanford University, where biomedical engineers were taking the acoustics of the heart and able to reproduce those in cymatic images. And I know we haven't touched on cymatics formally yet, but this has to do with those biosignatures as well. We'll weave it in right now. But they are showing that these sounds of the heart are expressing in geometric forms that we can actually see with our physical eye. And they can manipulate this basically by changing the frequency and the amplitude. That is at Stanford University. So we've known this. In my world, we've known this.
Yes, yes.
We've seen it in the temples. We've seen it in the holy spots all throughout the world. It is the principle. It is the call back to resonance where people say, I want to take a pilgrimage here. I want to visit this. Recently, I ran across something, CNN's top 10 list of spiritual sites in the USA. And I was like, oh, wow, I want to see what, this is great. I go to yatras, spiritual pilgrimages in India to visit all the Navagraha temples, the Mahabhuta temple, all of the significant, the sites in Europe of all the great Gothic, the Mary line, the Michael line.
Yep.
We go on pilgrimages to be reminded we're actually the temple ourselves. And we, through some form or fashion, we've lost that divine connection. So how do we get back to it? And in our daily world, some people call and they're so disconnected. So many traumas have taken place in their life that they can't find their way. And yes, I have invented, I have, put together a device that is a real targeted approach that can be used daily as the pitch pipe to bring you back into some type of resonance with yourself. But Heather, there are many ways that we can do this in the natural world. We can use our own voice. We can hear. I have a spiritual teacher that used to say, all of the answers are within. And in Ayurveda, we say that meditation is at the crux of healing and divine connection. And when we become really calm within, we hear our song.
Yes.
We hear
Yes.
our soul connection. But
Yes.
our problem is that today we are immersed in this world of, and I can't blame technology too much because I use it myself and we're all dependent on it, but we do have to limit our time. We have to use our brain. I heard something on the news the other day that the average 4 to 13-year-old is on TikTok for 106 minutes a day. I go, oh Lord, that's a lot for a young brain to, what is that messaging? Because
and all just that, cacophony of stimulation and what we're bombarded by. And I love you're talking about the soul song. It's, the shamans would speak to how if once you find your soul song and can sing your soul song again, it brings you back into harmony. But I also love what you're saying about how, the earth herself has meridian lines, energy lines. And I do believe the ancient cultures, which were more right brain dominant, allowed them that stronger energetic and intuitive sensitivity to vibration, to energies, to understand the interconnectedness of everything. And I think it's been since we've gotten more left brain dominant in these last 4,000 years that we've gotten into more disconnection from the aspects of ourselves, disconnection from the earth, from nature, from this understanding of everything being vibration and energy. And it's coming back. We're beginning to move into being more in balance with our left brain, right brain ways of knowing. And I think it is allowing this integration of these ancient spiritual understandings with modern science. But say a little bit more about the cymatics too, because I love how that is also about how sound becomes visible in form.
Yes, cymatics. In my view, we live in a cymatic universe because every space between the molecules and the molecules included, the atoms, the photons, every little space has its biosignature, has its vibrational imprint. And cymatics is a term that was coined by Dr. Hans Jenny, a Swiss medical doctor and natural scientist. And Cyma actually comes from the Greek word chema, and in Germany they pronounce it Cymatics. But in the West, we pronounce it cymatics. And this is the ability to make sound visible. If we look at the ancient temples and the structures as we travel on those very powerful places throughout the world, all throughout the world, we'll see cymatic images, because once you know what to look for, you see it everywhere, carved into the stones or carved into the palm of a deity. You will see the sound, the vibrational imprint. And so I have also developed visuals. My goal is to develop tools to help people remember, to surround themselves with, to keep them on track, because we do live in this world of constant stress. As a matter of fact, stress is the background music that we hear most of the time. And people are stressed out, and people are stressed out. They don't even know that they say, "Are you stressed?" I go, "Oh no, I'm not stressed." But they've got, so how can we align to these invisible geometric forms? So through cymatics, we can see sound made visible. And there's one particular code for the etheric sheath that is in my device that I have asked my colleague, John Reed, who innovated the Cymascope, the modern day version of a device to make sound visible. And so we have these sound visuals that people can actually gaze at. Now, this comes from an ancient technique called dristi. where you gaze at a geometric form. So when I was studying in India, we would have, and probably the most well-known geometric form for this technique that's out there is called the Sri Yantra. And so this is the sound made visible of the creation of the universe. And spiritual adepts, we focus on this Sri Yantra to achieve higher states of consciousness. When I saw cymatic images that we could actually make these healing sounds visible, I immediately went back to my years of this technique, learning this technique of drishti. What would happen if a person who didn't really know what they were looking at? What would happen if they look at this form that, when it's applied to the body, I know it has a physiological, because I have research showing that it has physiological improvement to the physical form. What would happen if someone just gazed at it like we do with this ancient yogic practice of drishti? And so I had these forms, and people can see them on my website. They're all throughout my book. All of those images that you see in my book is this particular image. And it became an easy way for people who said that they were too busy to meditate, didn't know how to meditate, couldn't meditate. For them, in just a 5 to 7 minute video experience of watching these images, they register on the visual cortex and send messages, because again, we're talking about photonic light emissions.
Yes, which carries information.
And this is an informational transfer throughout the whole body. So I call these the soundflower experiences, because when we're looking at cymatic experiments, the sound is emitted from beneath, and then there's a little crystal cuvette bowl of water, and the sound is projecting here. And then we have the camera from above that's watching the standing waves as they form on top of the water. They're actually flowering on top of the water. So we see the sound flowers flowering. And as one is flowering on top of the water, you already can see into the depths of the next flower forming. And so when you look at the images in my book, that's exactly what you're looking at. And all of those images in the book I've put together in the soundflower experience. So in just a very short period of time, people can immediately come back into a type of coherence, of body, mind, spirit, of these 5 bodies, helping them to get, more in alignment, more coherent. And it's just a really, really easy way. Children use them for focus. We have a group of people who are using them for memory and focus, because when we're really stressed, when the brain is really inflamed, we lose our ability to focus. Our memory is gone. We can't quite find the word. I mean, we've all had those moments, right? But when we're not aligned, we have this sound made visible, this biosignature, to help us reconnect and become more coherent.
Oh, this, I love that emphasis on coherence. And I think it is profound in terms of what you're describing, that are these ways through cymatics, through sound, through coming into resonance, that we are then able to remember who we truly are. Because we are in a world right now with so much chaos, so much cacophony, so much overstimulation. But when we can come into resonance, come into coherence, come back into alignment and harmony, we remember who we truly are and what we're capable of, and have that capacity not only to expand our consciousness, but come back into reconnection with the natural energies of the earth and the sky, and then are able to really be in our wholeness and be in that healing energy that we then emanate, that again, I think can transform our collective consciousness to support the healing of the world. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and this profound way that you are weaving the ancient understanding with modern science to make this accessible for us in this time.
Thank you, Heather. This has been great to share with you. Really enjoyed it. And, I think as each of us come together in our way of serving, helping our fellow brothers and sisters to take care of the physical, because when the physical isn't working, it's difficult to, figure out what should we do next to achieve our spiritual goals here. As we all work together, we do become stronger, and that field of coherence becomes solidified, and we're all together connected and working together. And this is what's, I believe, going to really change this astrological shifts with the, Pluto and the Saturn and all of the keepers of time. We are on sync. We are on track. We are listening, and we are coming together to join in the universal song, which is the song of our higher selves in a collective form.
Beautiful. And then we can remember being in the symphony of the spheres, being in harmony with all that is. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for the way that you're being of service and the healing that you're bringing into the world. And thank you to everyone listening today. Blessings to all of you.